Welcome to the programme. Mohamed Morsi had to battle with the military old guard to become president of Egypt in the country's first free elections earlier this year. That election posed the question of how the new president would deal with the powers behind the throne. In recent days, we've started to see the answer to that question. Morsi has sacked the head of the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces and Egypt's effective ruler since the overthrow of Mubarak, Field Marshal Tantawi. Other old guard figures have also been shown the door. But will this make Morsi secure? And how will he deal with the still continuing demands of protesters and strikers to fulfil the programme of the original revolution? Before we discuss these issues, let's take a look at this report.
القائد العام للقوات المسلحة وزير الدفاع والإنتاج الحربي للتقاعد اعتباراً من اليوم.
Chief of Staff General Sami Anan was also dismissed. Tensions have been running high between President Morsi and the military in what was seen as a struggle by each to assert power. General Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has replaced Tantawi as both Chief of the Armed Forces and Defence Minister. Morsi's announcement came on the same day as Egyptian army tanks entered the Sinai Peninsula. The previous week, the army had been caught unprepared by an attack in Sinai by Islamist militants, which killed 16 Egyptian border guards. This was an embarrassment for the military and may have given Morsi the chance he needed to assert his authority. Crowds gathered in Tahrir Square in support of Morsi's actions.
شيء عظيم جدا من فخامة الرئيس محمد مرسي أن يلغي هذا الإعلان الدستوري المكبل واللي كبل الدكتور مرسي وعطل الدكتور مرسي عن حاجات كتير جدا فاحنا بنؤيد هذا القرار وندعم الدكتور مرسي بكل ما أوتينا من قوة إن شاء الله.
Elsewhere in Cairo, reactions were mixed.
ويعتبر من النهارده يعني البلد ان هي حكم العسكر انتهى فيها. يعني حكم العسكر اللي هو كان مستمر لفتره طويله ديت بدأ خلاص ينتهي. هتبقى دولة مدنية وهيبدأ كل واحد ياخد حقه فيه.
هو قرار خارج عن الشرعية واتفق المجلس العسكري والسيد الدكتور مرسي على بقاء المجلس العسكري واختصاصاته يمتلكه المجلس العسكري وذلك الأمر الإعلان الدستوري مكمل. فاليوم ألغى الدكتور مرسي رئيس الجمهورية هذا الأمر بإقالة السيد المشير طنطاوي والسيد عنان وإلغاء الإعلان الدستوري المكمل فهو خروج عن الشرعية.
The sudden dismissal of Tantawi, who led Egypt after former President Mubarak was overthrown, came as a surprise to many. Yet Morsi maintains it was not an attempt to humiliate the former leader and awarded Tantawi Egypt's top state honour, the Order of the Nile.
ما اتخذت اليوم من قرارات لم أوجهه أبدا لأشخاص ولم أقصد به إحراج مؤسسات.
There has been no retaliation by the army against President Morsi or the Muslim Brotherhood. However, there are fears that Morsi's actions could upset the political balance of the country.
يخشى أن يعني استعادة الرئيس لسلطاته السياسية والتنفيذية والعسكرية إلى جانب اكتسابه للسلطات التشريعية أنها تعطي في النهاية مزيد من الديكتاتورية للرئيس ودي هتتوقف على ممارساته لأنه أصبح من حقه النهاردة تشكيل لجنة جمعية تأسيسية للدستور إذا تم إبطال الجمعية الحالية فكيف سيشكلها؟ هل سينفرد بالقرار أم سيشارك القوى السياسية؟ يعني استفادته من السلطات التي استعادها هتتوقف على ممارساته إذا ما كانت ممارسات مفتوحة تسمح بالمشاركة ولا تسمح بالمغالبة وهيمنة تيار الإخوان المسلمين على السلطة.
As Morsi prepares for his first visit to the USA next month, questions will certainly be asked about Egypt-US relations and just what has this move done for his status on an international stage.
Well, with me to discuss the future of the Egyptian revolution are Dr. Mohamed Ghanim, who's the Muslim Brotherhood spokesman in the UK, and Dr. Wafiq Mustafa, chairman of the Conservative Arab Network. And joining us by the phone is Paul Uziskin, a chair of Peace Now UK. Welcome to the programme, all of you. Mohamed, first of all, congratulations on your candidate winning the presidency. The recent events, do these mark the beginning of a struggle for effective power between the old order represented by SCAF and the new president, or is it the striking of a new agreement to share power between the two?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I wouldn't put it either way. I would say it's getting out of a stagnation position, because, you know, the old guard or the military council, that was an extent of La Mubarak regime. And that stagnation, because of the head of them has plucked promoting other middle grade in the army, and the position was unsolved. And to do that in that time, in particular, where we have problematic about the authority or the balance authority between the army and the president, political wise, and it seems this decision has solved all that. We get out of the stagnation position, we rebalance or rewrite the balance between the authority of the president, although it's not finally defined yet unless the constitution is fully written, and what the army was confused. The Tantawi was past his mid-70s, and the other was looking what is next. It was obvious next to change, to have a change. The change came in favor actually to Tantawi, because he's been rewarded, and that gave him an immune path with the highest middle in the country. Then you can, I don't think Mr. Tantawi or the other, which has been changed in the military council, could hope in a better position. That's why they accept it, they took it, now they relax, and the new generation will come with a new balance in the legislation authority or the president authority to take the country forward in more democratic process.
Okay. Wolfgang, let me just ask you the same issue. Is this the beginning of a conflictual relationship between the president and the military, or is it the beginning of a new pact to share power, do you think?
I think something was going to happen. There have been lack of dynamism and lack of vision over the last year or so. And I think there's realignment more than anything else, in my view, because many of the generals are still in position. As Mohammed said, the power of the president still not clear. What power he have, what power doesn't he have. It's still the situation not clear in Egypt, how it's going to manifest itself, say, in the next 2 or 3 months. There is some stability. Some people, they say, we're a little bit of internal coup between the armed forces. You're talking about 20 generals were sitting for 18 months, meeting every day. And I could imagine they were getting in each other's nerves, because they were having several hours meeting every day. And there was, as Mohammed said, there was 2 generations, virtually 2 generations. Field Marshal Tantawi was 76, and he looks from the pictures very old for his age, and he looks sick man to me. And I think the lack of dynamism, and that was a very important factor.
Okay, Paul, from Peace Now UK, let me just bring you into the discussion. What's your view, looking, so to say, from the outside at Egyptian politics? Do you think this is a moment of stability, or do you think that this is likely to presage further internal conflict in Egypt?
I think that everybody who aspires to democracy and freedom of expression should be supported in every way possible. And I think in many respects it's a mistake of Israeli reaction to the Arab awakening, and particularly what's been going on in Egypt, that they haven't spoken the kind of words that I've just spoken. There are nonetheless huge uncertainties looking at this from an Israeli perspective, not least because I hear from friends in Cairo great disappointment at the way Mohammed Morsi is already appearing to be grabbing power and beginning to look and sound like yet another Egyptian almost dictator. But the initial feeling in an Israel that's very paranoid about what's going on around it, and especially in light of what's been going on in Sinai over the last month or so, is to feel very uncertain and to wonder what really is going to happen in relations between Egypt and Israel.
Okay, well, Mohammed, we'll come back to the international dimension in a moment, but just to stay on the question of the domestic alignment of forces in Egypt, there's been some signs of a serious fracture between the supporters of Mohamed Morsi and other people who were involved in making the revolution in Egypt. For instance, the chair of the Freedom of Justice Party, Mohamed Morsi's party, attacked people on the left recently as accepting of foreign money and so forth. Do you think that Mohamed Morsi is going to have difficulty in satisfying the kind of Republic of Tahrir, the demands of the 18 days?
I think we have to remember that Mohamed Morsi is being elected, and for a free election, which Egypt has been denied for thousands of years. It has been said Mr. Morsi was freely elected of the 3,000 since pharaohs. Then Morsi act and he feel as the Egyptian people behind him. And this is the only support he has. And to have some other opinion or some opposition, if you could say, that's healthy. And this is what we Egyptian people have to learn, to live with a different opinion, to live with a different attitude even. We have a new plantation of political atmosphere. And that cannot go free with one dictatorship. We just finish the dictatorship and we start democracy. And with this democratic process, we have to absorb the other side, the other opinion. And Mr. Morsi is not the odd man out for that. We have to expect some people who might differ in his decision, might differ with his policies. And this is what we need at the moment, as far as we stick with the principle, respect each other, but differ.
Well, how do you see this? Because every post-revolutionary government has to reckon with the problem of satisfying the demands of the people who made the revolution. It's true, as Mohammed says, that President Morsi won a majority in the second round, but Hamdin Sabair won Cairo and Alexandria in the first round. Very substantial block of left-wing and radical opinion there. How do you think he'll manage that?
I think he is going to have a very rocky road. What I can see in Arabic televisions, I watch Arabic televisions a lot, being Egyptian myself, to see what's going on, by the way. And I think there's too much romanticization of political Islam. And it's very similar to the romanticization of communism 80, 90 years ago, where every young man wanted to be communist or socialist. And we're getting on that stage, which virtually the only way it will go into totalitarian type of state, because some television channels have been closed, some editors or writers have been charged for inciting against the president or inciting about something or another. And that is where I think the dangerous road starts. And I think at the moment, there is a feel of euphoria, of victory, of being the people who have been given the leadership of Egypt. We must put Egypt in the context of the rest of the Arab world. There is a lot of divisions, and divisions going deeper. Ethnic, sectarial divisions, and Egypt is not any different. Probably more peaceful, not as a violent country, but I think simmering with a lot of problems, particularly the kind of threats I could see now, and some form of arrogance as well. I think because I think that's going to be a problem.
Okay, now let's move on to the question that Paul raised, the question of international relations, and he and others have cited the moving of the Egyptian army into the Sinai for the first time in very, very many years as a kind of destabilizing thing. Do you read it like that? Why do you think that that President Morsi did that, and what do you think will be the effects internationally?
Well, in international, he mentioned too many times the uncertainty. One of the fact of life is uncertain. Especially Egypt is bridging from a dictatorship to democracy. And if you look at the history, any country has passed that has paid heavily cost, and the change was radical. But in Egypt, we see this is one of the best that's happened. Very smooth transmission from a dictatorship to a democracy. Although, when my friend here mentioned about this political Islam, the political Islam is fraud of democracy. Then when we talk about a new democracy in the region. In Sinai in particular, what happened is this area has been neglected by the Egyptian army as the policy of the old Mubarak old regime. And that creates like a safe haven for some groups who has been kicked out of every country. And they find their place as their home. Obviously, if you are find that safe haven in the desert because you have nobody where else to go, you are militant, you have army, then a lot of people use you. Maybe you have an objective yourself, and this being used to try to unstable the area, maybe to test the Mr. Morsi government or his authority, maybe to create uneasy situation between Hamas and the Egyptian government. You never know behind there unless things become more clear. But what Mr. Morsi does, which is he's right, he tried to have some control in the area and to prevent those people who use Sinai as a safe haven. To do that, you need to be strong and you need power. Israel, I've heard for the last couple of days, tried now to aggravate the situation against Egypt to take the tank out. And if they take the tank out, they are trying to unstable the situation, not to let the Egyptian army to finish the job and try to clear this area from the people abusing it.
Paul, let me bring you back in on this issue, because I mean, you know, whoever's looking at this situation from the outside, be it the American government or the Israeli government or anybody else, they're never going to have an Egyptian government again which was as compliant with their wishes as the Mubarak government. Wouldn't it be just best to say, okay, look, that era's gone. This is going to be a much more independent state with its own foreign policy. It's not going to be subservient. It's not going to be as willing to accommodate Israeli demands. We're just going to have to adjust to this.
Yes, I think that's what's happening on the ground. That's what's happening behind the headlines. I think in order for any kind of deal between Egypt and Israel to be maintained, there has to be contact between the two. And from everything I've read, there is that contact. Otherwise, I think the circumstances would have deteriorated to a much, much worse degree. And it's to that I'd like to ask a question to Dr. Ghanem. He sounds very, very placatory and very moderate and an extremely reasonable tone. But this is the same guy who talked about closing the Suez Canal and preparing for war with Israel not so very long ago. I think when Israelis hear those words and see them written up on the internet, they would worry that what's really going on behind the scenes is something else.
Well, just to comment on Paul,
yes.
I never said that to close the canal. It was an interview when I explained what is the strike mean. If we say a whole strike, I mean that might involve closing the canal, because if you have a general strike, what are we going to do? But I never asked for it. But he seems to be studying, he's doing his homework.
Well, Fik, let me just bring you in on this. How do you read the international impact now? Do you think that an Egypt with a stronger and more independent foreign policy is a good thing?
Oh, certainly having strong and foreign policy is a good thing, but breaking relations or breaking the Camp David agreement is another thing. And I think means if this happen, and I hope it doesn't, it means Egypt going to be consumed in the 90s, 50s, 60s squabbles. And most likely Egypt is not up to it. And another thing, why should we go to war? How going to develop economy of Sinai, of Egypt, if we start thinking about now what we're going to do? I think we're looking for stability, we're looking for a good relationship with countries in the region, including Israel. I'm saying that, a lot of people say, how? Of course, Germany have fought Britain, and there was a British army in Germany for a long time, 50,000 soldiers. So, and they are very friendly nations. France fought Britain 200 years ago. They're very friendly nations. We have to get out of this dictator mindset of creating culture of hate. We became very poor country. You got 85 million people. You got to feed them. Having strong and independent foreign policy doesn't mean going to fight with your neighbors.
Mohammed, have I missed something? I don't believe anybody's talking about Egypt going to war, are they?
No, not at the moment at all.
But would be in the future? When you say not at the moment, would be...
Well, I will go back to my friend here with the uncertainty. You never know. To have a war, like any other event, you need factors to work together in order to evolve in a war. At the moment, Egypt is not busy to build up for war at all. We are coming from a dictatorship. We has abused power. The country was nearly bankruptcy. He took billions and billions out of the country. He destroyed the internal structure. He has abused all the relationship in favor of the other, not in the Egyptian people. Then it will be unwise completely to start to build up for war. Before you build up war, you need stability, internal stability. You need army who's ready. The policy before, the army was acting as an agent to Israel.
So it's a matter of timing.
It's not a matter of timing. It depends on each. It takes two to tango. And before, there was policies which nobody accepted. But Mubarak was acting as an agent.
Well, let me just put that point to Paul. I mean, Paul, surely the Israeli government has only got itself to blame here. They conducted the foreign policy that they were happy with the Mubarak government, and the Mubarak government's complacency and willingness to cooperate with Israel was part of its downfall. Surely it would have been better if Egypt had a more independent policy. Perhaps you wouldn't be looking at the uncertainty you're looking at now.
I agree with you. I think that every country that is a democracy is entitled to its own independent foreign policy. But to conduct any kind of foreign policy, to change, to go through the transition that Dr. Ghanem and Dr. Mustafa are seeing is necessary for Egypt needs a great deal of money. $4.8 billion is what Egypt is looking for from the IMF. And the IMF is headed by a lady called Christine Lagarde. I wonder if Mrs. Lagarde is going to say to Mr. Morsi, when they begin negotiations about this kind of sum, do you think, Mr. Morsi, that women are not as mentally alert as men?
Well, okay, Paul, I'm afraid we're just coming to the end. So on that highly contentious question, which I'm sure we'll return to in future editions of the programme, we're going to have to bring this section to a close. But do come back after the break, where we'll be discussing the, if possible, even more contentious question of the Syrian revolution.